This is the sound of all of us, singing with love in the will to trust.
Well, good morning. How are you? How are the seats up there? Yeah? You know, they didn't tell me that I was going to follow what we just experienced. Was that remarkable or what? It's a good thing they didn't tell me that I was going to come after that incredible experience of God, of grace, of joy, of hope. I don't know about you, but I think we should bring those young people back and just let them spend the next 3 days with us. Maybe we'll learn something. What do you think? Yeah. However, I don't think the organizers of the conference are going to let me do that, so I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you. And I'm also very nervous as I stand up here on this stage. Some of you have heard me tell this story before. I'm going to tell it again, especially after what we just saw. It's a true story. One of the sisters in my community who has long gone to God. This story is probably almost 60 or 70 years old now, but it's still legend. Do you have stories like that in your families? Yeah. Story goes like this. This is probably 70 years ago that this happened. This sister taught first grade, and they used to say about her that she could make this clicker read. That's how good she was at teaching. She taught first grade, and the pastor, Monsignor, was a wonderful, wonderful man, and the sisters really enjoyed being there, and the pastor and the priest loved having the sisters and so forth. Anyhow, it was the first week of school, and the pastor sent word over for all the children to go to church. And the first grade sister sent word back saying, I don't think the first graders are ready to go to church yet because they don't know how to sit still and so forth. And he said, oh, no, let them come, it'll be fine. So over they go to church. Now, when you're in church all those years ago, there was a pew right next to sister where all the special children of God would sit. Anybody here ever one of those special children of God? Yes. Well, sure enough, this pew was not quite long enough for all the children of God. So this one child of God migrated to the very first pew and sat right on the end of the pew. Sister was about 5 rows behind this little boy. So Mass begins, everything's fine, and then the homily begins. And the pastor is over here, and about 5 minutes into the homily, the little guy starts having his own homily. About 15 minutes into the homily, with no sign of stopping, the guy's having even a fuller homily. About 20 minutes into the homily, no sign of stopping. The little boy is now walking on the kneelers, talking to all of his friends in the first pew. About 30 minutes into the homily, no sign of stopping. The little boy is now standing on the pew, on the seat, looking towards the back of the church to wave to all his older brothers and sisters. About 40 minutes into the homily, no sign of stopping. Sister can finally stand it no longer. She taps a little girl on the shoulder. The little girl comes out of the pew, stands next to sister, and sister says to her very quietly, you go up there and you tell him that sister said he has to sit down and stop that right this minute. So the little girl walks right up the middle aisle, right past the little boy, up into the sanctuary, goes over to the pastor, pulls on the chasuble, and he leans over and she says in a stage whisper, sister said you are to sit down and stop that right this minute. So, 70 years ago, the only answer when a sister said that to you was only one 2-word answer, and you know what it is. Yes, sister. And that's what he did, and he sat down. So because of that incredible experience we just had, I'm not going to dare stand up there on that stage. But I'm absolutely delighted to be here with you today. And you have a blue paper that you received when you came in. And it is for you to draw little tic-tac-toes on, or write a poem on or something. Or you want to take it home with you. And in a week or so, when somebody says, so what did you do in Sydney for 3 days? How did it start? And you'll talk about this wonderful experience we just had with these young people. And then you may say, and then some old sister said something next. And this blue paper might help you to remember what she said. Because this paper, what you have is what we used to call at the United Nations when I was there, I worked there for 13 years, talking points. So these are the talking points, okay? So what I'd like to share with you today, you can see right there on the page, I've been asked to speak about how do we do leadership for mission for the kind of world that those young people just sang and portrayed for us. How do we be leaders for that kind of mission, to create that kind of world in the vision of the gospel through the life of Jesus the Christ, empowered by the Spirit, all for the honor and glory of God? How do we do that? So I'd like to visit with you today 3 different ways of doing that. And you'll see the 3 pieces right there. Leadership for mission. First, I'd like to say a few words about joy of the gospel. Secondly, practicing the gospel. I don't know about you, but reading it is great. And it's all well and good until I come out of my room in the morning. And then I actually have to practice it with somebody, okay? But practicing the gospel is a bit of a challenge. Then, of course, lastly, encounter. Encounter as Paschal mystery. Because if you do not think for 1 minute that the gospel is not going to take us right to the foot of the cross, then maybe you might want to go outside and get another cuppa, because the gospel will take us right to the foot of the cross. And if you don't think that what those young people sang about in terms of inclusivity, dialogue, and encounter, if you don't think that that is going to take us right through the Paschal mystery to a dying to self like we have never seen before, so that a rising to the presence of Jesus Christ through the power of the Holy Spirit might live in us, then you might want to go out and have a second cuppa. Because all of this costs absolutely everything. It costs everything. So I'd like to begin by beginning, always a context. And the context, of course, both from our faith life as well as our life on this planet, as one species among many, is always the largest context we can find. The universe, the cosmos. Absolutely glorious, isn't it? Pure mystery. Look at those pictures. Just incredible. 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 I mean, what else do you do in the presence of such beauty and such mystery, such awe, except to want to learn how to be inclusive, to dialogue, and encounter? Because if you don't think the person sitting right here, what's your name, sir? Danes, hello. If I don't think that he is mystery, then I don't know what that is either. He is as much mystery as that is. I am as much mystery as that is. Why do we feel awestruck when we look at the universe, and less than awestruck, perhaps, when we look at somebody right here? It's a challenge. This is a black hole. Did you read about the black holes that were discovered? Isn't that fascinating? And let's hear it for the young women here. Was a young woman, right, graduate student, who created the algorithm to actually take a picture of black holes. All right, let's hear it for the young women here. Yes, right. But you know, black holes, when that was discovered, when that picture was shown a couple of weeks ago, I thought Albert Einstein must have been dancing a dance in the heavens, because he said there were such things as black holes. And of course, everybody said, I don't think so. Well, now we have a picture of them. And one of the things that fascinated me about them, I don't know much about science, but one of the things that fascinated me was this idea that when a black hole is formed, there is such a gravitational pull that it sucks everything into the heart of it, even light. And I don't know about you, but when I was watching those young people, I felt like I was drawn into a black hole. I felt like the power of God was just taking all of us in this room and sucking us right into the heart of God, so that we would know what it's like to be one. And how do we be one? we get much better at inclusivity, at dialogue, and encounter. Now, in case you're lost, right? I love these little direction or arrows that tell us where we are. So we are here, okay? We are here. It's always very, very helpful. And of course, here is another scientific understanding. This is a visual explanation with words of holons. Holons are parts of wholes. A letter in a word in a sentence in a paragraph, paragraph in a chapter, chapter in a book, book within a library, library within a library, libraries within libraries. They are all holons. Just like an individual is an individual whole, but also part of a family. A family is a part, but also a whole, but it's a part of a community. Community is part of a city. City is part of a county and a state and a nation and so forth. How do we be better at being holons, at knowing that I am a whole entity in and of myself, but, spoiler alert, I am not the center of the universe? My 7-year-old grandnephew thinks he is the center of the universe. And for a 7-year-old, it's kind of cute. For a 37-year-old, it's downright obnoxious. And for a 57 or a 67 or a 77-year-old, it's sinful. How do we understand what it means to be part of something larger than ourselves? So here we are. In this part, this detail, as they say, of the universe. And here we are with a little more detail. Recognize that? Yes, your beautiful homeland. I'm delighted to be here again. I had a wonderful time when I was here a couple years ago for 5 weeks, and I never got to Sydney. So here I am in Sydney. I'm thrilled, absolutely thrilled. And of course, here we are with a little more detail. Here we are with a little more detail. Here we are with a little more detail. Here we are with a little bit of blurry detail. And here we are also as part of a whole. We are part of a holon, not just part of the planet, not just part of the human family. We are part of the family of the church, whom we love. And so as we're here today and for these days, trying to understand how do we form leaders? How do we lead for mission? For a mission from the heart of God that is about unity, that is about wholeness, that is about holons. Well, we can't get there without getting very good, and I mean very good, at inclusivity, dialogue, and encounter. So the context is always, always Scripture. And I have some scriptures at the top of your paper that surround us in the days that we're here. Look at these scriptures. And I didn't pick these out. They're the scriptures from last Sunday to next Sunday and these days. I have made you a light to the Gentiles that you may be an instrument of salvation to the ends of earth. That's what those young people were just singing about. I am the good shepherd, says the Lord. I know my sheep and mine know me. I came so they might have life and have it more abundantly. More inclusivity, not less. More dialogue, not less. More encounter, not less. I chose you from the world to go and bear fruit that will last. We've been set apart for God's work, for the work to which we have been called. And then finally, we're here next Sunday. I give you a new commandment, says the Lord. Love one another as I have loved you. Always the scripture, always the outer world, and always the inner world. Whenever we come to do this gospel work, whenever we come to do mission work, whenever we come to do leadership for mission, we come in the context of the sacred word. We come in the context of the outer world, the real world that those young people just sang about, the inner world, and we come, of course, always in terms of beauty, music, and art. So my three little gifts offering for you today. Leadership for mission, the joy of the gospel. Leadership for mission, practicing the gospel. And leadership for mission, encounter as Paschal mystery. Now, of course, we can't start anything here in Australia without a song, okay? So you have 3 songs at the top of your page. Those of you have already figured out that I'm probably going to use one of these songs for each of these parts. Anybody figure that out? Okay, yes. Anybody here a J on the Myers-Briggs? J's are people that like outlines. Anybody like an outline? Okay. Anybody make a list of the things you need to do in the course of a day? Don't be ashamed. Raise those hands up nice and high. Anybody check off the things that you do after you do it? There you go. Anybody write something down and check it off in the morning that you did yesterday so your day gets off to a good start? All right. See, I know that laugh. I know that laugh. Okay? All right. Well, you're absolutely right. We're going to use a song for each one of these little ideas to visit. And the first one, of course, is an Alleluia, because we're still in the Easter season. And I think you know this one. It comes from the Caribbean, our Caribbean brothers and sisters. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Good. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Oh, it's great. Very good. So, joy of the gospel. Joy of the gospel has everything to do, it seems to me, as I've read Pope Francis's apostolic exhortation, The Joy of the Gospel. Anybody else read that? Yes. I would say read it again and again and again. But one of the things he's very clear about in there is that if we are going to live this joy of the gospel and follow in the footsteps of Jesus, it is all going to be about making choices. We're going to have to choose how we will be in every situation, in every encounter, in every dialogue, in every opportunity for setting the table for another person, also known as inclusivity. We're going to have to choose how we will not be. I was traveling here the other day, and a plane was delayed, which is a usual experience. It was delayed by about 2.5 hours. And all I could think of was having to call Peter or Danielle and say, and I'm not going to get there, you know. So that was enough to make the planes get on schedule again, you know. But you know, I saw what it means to choose how am I going to be in a situation and to choose how I'm not going to be. I saw people taking out their frustration on the poor gate agent who had absolutely nothing to do with the flight being 2.5 hours delayed. Did you ever see that? Yeah. So can you do anything about a flight being delayed? No. You can do everything about how you're going to be in that situation. Francis lays that out pretty powerfully in The Joy of the Gospel. We always have a choice of how we're going to be in a situation, and we have a choice of how we're not going to be. And we have to know the difference. And so I just want to visit just a couple of ideas here. These are the talking points. One of the things that Francis says in The Joy of the Gospel that I think has everything to do with inclusivity is this whole idea of choosing love over fear. Now, I don't know about you, but where I come from, in the global north, the United States of America, there's an awful lot of fear around. Fear of other. Fear of anything and anyone that is not me. Fear of other languages, fear of other religions, fear of other cultures, fear of other races, fear of everything that those young people just sang about. Is there any of that here? Yeah. Not in this room, of course, but certainly on this continent. Well, let me just say a couple things about fear. Fear functions as certitude. Because when you're afraid of something, the thing that makes you feel the best is to be certain about something, even if it's wrong. So if I'm afraid of him, and I am very uncertain, that's why I'm afraid, what fear does, it gives me something to be certain about, and it grounds me. It makes me right and you wrong. It makes you good and somebody else bad. Fear functions as certitude. So I'm just offering here that one of the things about inclusivity, in terms of the joy of the gospel, is what's going to get in the way of inclusivity is fear. Because fear functions as certitude. And inclusivity is a wavy kind of a surface. If you don't want to be on a wavy kind of a surface, then you want certitude. The second thing about fear is it masks as control. Now, nobody in this room, I know, but there are a lot of other people in a lot of other rooms who are feeling that life is getting away from them. They have no control. Does anybody feel they don't have any control over anything? Yeah. But it's not that kind of control. It's the control that's born out of fear. And so fear really masks as control. So when you run into somebody that says, this is the way it has to be, because it has to be that way, what you're going to say to yourself right away is, and hopefully eventually say to that person, of what are you afraid? Because human beings only function out of two emotional bases, love or fear. We do everything we do out of love, or we do everything we do out of fear. The most disarming question around a fear of inclusivity is, of what are you afraid? Fear masks as control. And the third one, fear hides vulnerability. Anybody here like vulnerability? Please stand up. Yes, notice how no one jumped to their feet. Actually, notice how no one jumped to their feet, okay? You know, in the Western world, we are not really good at vulnerability. But you know what vulnerability is? It's not the opposite of, being brave or courageous. Vulnerability, the opposite of vulnerability is arrogance. And it comes from the world of science. The only thing a species and beings can be is arrogant or vulnerable. Vulnerable meaning that we are open to everything that life offers us. Arrogant means we spray ourselves with Teflon and we only let some things in, and things that we want to let in. Fear hides vulnerability. I love this definition of fear, the little acronym, F-E-A-R, false evidence appearing real. Okay? And I don't know about you, but in my part of the world, we're dealing with a lot of things that are appearing real. We're dealing with fake news. We're dealing with alternative facts. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, not to your own facts. So fear is nothing more than false evidence that appears to be real. In Joy of the Gospel, what Francis says over and over and over again is to choose love over fear. Love over fear. Do you know love and fear are the two words in the scriptures that are used the most? Yeah, they're used the most. Fear is used 873 times in Scripture, and love is used almost 1,200 times in Scripture. Jesus never says to his disciples to not have fears. What does he say? He says, be not afraid. Don't be your fears. You can have fears, but don't be them. Be instead love. And what does love do? Exactly the opposite. It welcomes all. So if you want to be more inclusive, then just kind of say to yourself, I wonder how welcoming I am. And you know in this much time, don't you, when you're with somebody and you're welcomed or not. Do you ever walk into a room and in this much time, you know whether you belong or not? Yeah. It's not rocket science. So one thing for inclusivity is how welcoming am I? And am I welcoming to all? How engaging am I? Can you come here for a minute, please? Well, you're a brave one, okay? You have no idea what I'm going to ask you to do you? Okay? All right? I'm going to ask you to just simply engage. Boy. Isn't that a cute engage? Okay? It's kind of like the French air kissing, Now engage. Hold on. Okay. That's a little better. Okay? Here's engage. Yeah, good. You got it. Yeah. Lock in like you need somebody. Engage. Love engages all. I spend a lot of time with lots of groups of people, and in the corridors, I'll usually say something like, good morning, how are you today? Fine. How's it going? All right. Are you happy? I don't know. Or I love this one. You pass somebody, hey, how you doing? Well, if you stopped for a minute, I might be able to tell you, you know. We have a lot to learn about how to engage each other. Engage, not run past each other, but engage. And then, of course, love forgives all. Forgives. Really forgives. Anybody ever really been forgiven by somebody else? Have you ever had the experience? I'm not talking about God now. Have you ever been forgiven by somebody else? Yes. It's the most powerful feeling in the world, isn't it? And we're not very good at it. Here's a little way to remember love. L-O-V-E. Looking at others with the very eyes of God. I know, it could be simple. Some people might say, oh, God, this is so corny. Where did she come from? You know? But I'm telling you, it is as simple as that. Looking at others with the very eyes of God. You do that, and you are automatically going to want to put another seat at the table to be more inclusive. You're going to automatically want to sit and say to someone, you know what, Mario, I never thought about what you're just saying in that way. Would you tell me some more? Otherwise known as dialogue. But see, we typically don't do that, do we? Well, you do. But in other groups, they don't. They typically say, Mario, that's the stupidest thing I ever heard. Where'd you ever get that? How have you lived so long and still thought that? No. Looking at Mario through the very eyes of God. Imagine if God was sitting here. Don't you think I'd want to say to God, would you please say some more, please? I never thought about it that way. Secondly, the joy of the gospel also says, besides love over fear, mercy over judgment. Now, this is a tough one for we Westerners, because judgment lives within. Now, I'm not talking about the judgment where, you get up in the morning, it's raining, so you take an umbrella, I'm talking about the judgment that critiques somebody else through my lens, makes a decision about them, and then acts on it. Judgment comes from within. Judgment looks out always for ego. What drives judgment is me, myself, and I. I got to make myself look good all the time. As soon as I start functioning like that, judgment's just going to become a way of life. I'm going to make up my mind about somebody before I even know their name sometimes. And judgment always leans towards superiority. It's a way of being in relationship. Why am I saying this? Because if we function this way, inclusivity, dialogue, and encounter are going to be almost impossible to do. Almost impossible. So what's mercy? Well, Francis, of course, tells us mercy is God's name. That's what mercy is. Mercy is that way of being that says, even if my friend here, Doreen, has harmed me in some way, and I've got the capacity to kind of even things out, I choose not to. I choose to exercise a way of being with her that is, in fact, mercy over judgment, even if she deserves, quote unquote, something. Mercy is unearned. And mercy is our name, Francis tells us in that apostolic exhortation. Not only is mercy God's name, but we should be mercy walking around also. Inclusion over exclusion. Again, probably not you, but I'll tell you where I come from, this is a real hard climb. Inclusion over exclusion. We want to build walls. We want to have a political structural system that is about keeping people out and not trying to find out even why they want to come in. This is tough, inclusion over exclusion. And where that comes from is somehow or other in our psyche, there is a need to dominate. There's a need to actually be in charge, to be number one. Anybody here like sports? Yeah. I'm going to take a real chance here, and then I'm going to run away and hide behind Marion, This need to dominate gets fed in Western culture by sports. There always has to be a winner. Now, I'm not talking about athletics. I love the games. I love the teams. I love that whole idea. What I don't love is that somebody has to win. This need to dominate We're number one. We're number one. It's in us, in our Western cultures. So if you think inclusivity, dialogue, and encounter are going to happen if we have in our DNA this need to dominate, as my niece would say, I don't know what planet you're living on, Aunt Carol. Inclusion over exclusion is about this need to legislate. Now, I'm not saying don't have laws, but law follows practice. The first go-to for anything is never what does the law say. The first go-to is what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to be in a relationship? What does our experience mean? And then out of that, some good practices come along. And finally, the need to escalate. We have that going on in some governments in terms of populist movement. Do you have that here? Yeah. There's a need to just keep escalating, keep raising the bar higher and higher and higher so that some people kind of matter and most others don't. So what does it mean to talk about inclusion? These three simple little guidance pieces. It's always circles, not walls. Always a circle. And the dimension is always wide, not narrow. As soon as you find yourself saying to yourself, oh God, here comes John. I never thought he would show up today. I hope he's not in my group. Okay? He's in your group. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay? But you probably don't do that. But there are lots of people, even when they have a church meeting, you know, somebody walks in and people are like, oh my God, I hope she doesn't sit with me, you know? We have this tendency of not going wide, but going more narrow. And then finally up there, porous, not rigid. Notice I'm not saying that there's no such thing as identity and boundaries. All those things are important. But we do not have to put a concrete, impenetrable space around us. You heard the joke about a Catholic dying and going to heaven? And they get, met by Peter. They go on a tour, and Peter's showing this person all this wonderful food and dancing and singing, and oh, everybody's so happy. Peter's like, wow, this is great. And the guy says, yeah, I want to be here. And we said, well, wait a minute. He said, come on this part of the tour. So he goes down this corridor, big concrete wall and all. But on the other side of the wall, he hears the same kind of singing and dancing and laughing and smells the food. So the guy says to Peter, hey, what's going on over there? And Peter says, well, the same thing that's going on over there. And the guy says, well, why's the wall? He said, you're not going back, so I can tell you. We keep all the Catholics behind that wall because they think they're the only ones here. We have a bit of a tendency, even in our faith, to not be porous, but to be rigid. When everything we know empirically about cultures and other religions is the more I relate from who I am and meet up with someone who is not me, not my culture, not my faith, not my gender, I actually get strengthened in my faith and my culture and my gender. I don't know about you, but I was taught exactly the opposite of that. I was taught you cannot go to your best friend's wedding because it's in a Lutheran church. And if you go in that Lutheran church, you are going to go to hell. When you tell a 10-year-old that, she really believes that, Thank God we don't believe that anymore, hopefully. So, I'm going to take just a pause. What are you hearing about the joy of the gospel? Leadership for mission. What are you feeling? And probably the most important question, what difference does it make? Just take just a couple seconds. Just jot something down. What did I just hear? Because what you heard is whatever it is that you need to hear, and everybody here heard something differently. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And what difference does it make? Okay, everybody all right? Ready? 2. I'm not going to ask you to do this, so don't worry. Okay? All right? I am going to ask you, though, to sing as if you were actually rejoicing. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice in the Lord always. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. Again I say rejoice. Rejoice, rejoice. Again I say rejoice. Fabulous. Very good. Very good. I bet you all thought maybe you shouldn't be singing, right? Okay. So, second piece. What does it mean to talk about leadership for mission to actually practice the gospel? To actually practice it, otherwise known as dialogue. Well, again, just a couple talking points. I think the first thing, if we're going to practice this leadership for mission and exercise dialogue, we first and foremost have to name the global reality. And I just put the answer to what's the naming of the global reality? We are the global reality. Right in this room, we are the global reality. All of its good stuff and all of its not so good stuff. We are the global reality. We also have to claim the church reality. And who and what is the church reality? We are. We are the church in this room. We are the church outside this room. We are the church. We have to claim that we are the church. And finally, taming relational reality. We've got to get our heads and hearts around how to be in relationship. And who needs to do that? We do. We are the world, we are the church, and we are our relationships. So if we're going to be in dialogue, we have to first of all know that we are in fact in dialogue with the world, because we are the world. We are in dialogue with the church, because we are the church. And we are in dialogue with every relationship we have, because we are our relationships. That's all there is relationship. So what does that look like? Well, I think if it's going to be a prophetic response to our gospel reality, I think we're going to need to listen to the gospel. Really listen to it. And you're probably better at this than most groups. You're certainly better than I am. We do not listen to the gospel. Because if we did, we would be changed by it. So we do not listen to it. We need to speak the gospel. And we do not speak the gospel. Well, maybe you do. I shouldn't say that. I don't speak the gospel. I pick and choose what of the gospel I want to speak. And the stuff that's too hard, I don't speak that. How many times should we forgive, Lord? I love the math answer. 7 times? Nope, not enough. 70 times 7? Oh, let me see, what is that? 49 times? 490 times? No, the answer to that is not a math question. The answer to how many times do we forgive? The answer is yes. That's how many times we forgive. Yes. But I don't have courage all the time to speak that gospel. But if we're going to be a prophetic response, we need to speak the gospel. And we need to witness for the gospel. When was the last time the gospel actually cost you something? When was the last time it cost me something? I'm sort of ashamed to tell you. But if we're going to be a prophetic response in the global reality in this world that we are, we're going to need to witness to the gospel. And you know those little letters at the bottom of that, don't worry, that's not a word that you don't know in another language, okay? Mother Teresa was asked, how does she keep all of the gospel message in her mind and heart? She said, the entire gospel is at the end of my 5 fingers, right at the tip of my fingers. And she said, that message is this: you did it to me. That's the gospel that we need to listen to, that we need to speak, and that we need to witness. Whatever we do to each other or any other living being, we in fact do it to God, to Jesus. You did it to me. And whenever we do witness the global reality and really listen to the gospel and really speak the gospel and witness to it, we do that also to Jesus. The discipleship response, I think, is these three things. We have to have a missionary stance. And missionary doesn't mean get on a plane, and go to the other part of the world, So don't come to the United States to be a missionary, please. Stay right here and go out of yourself. That's what a missionary is. Stay right where your feet are and go out of yourself. That's a missionary stance. And again, you're probably better at it than other people that I spend a lot of time with. But a missionary would much rather go on a plane and go to Zimbabwe and be a missionary. It's harder to stay where you are and step out the way Jesus would. Missionary stance. A contemplative stance. And a contemplative simply means to take a long, loving look at what's in front of you. It doesn't mean to go and hide in a cloister, although that's wonderful. It doesn't mean to go and pray all day, although that's wonderful. A contemplative stance is to stand in front of everything and everyone that you encounter and say this to yourself: I am in the presence of Jesus Christ. I am in the presence of the image and likeness of God. If I can do that, I'm going to stand a much better chance trying to dialogue with Sue. Contemplative stance. Take a long, loving look through the eyes of God at what's in front of you. And finally, a faithful stance. A faithful stance. And again, that's not a new word that you don't know. That's Jesus' question to the disciples and to us all the time. Will you also leave? Will you also leave? When the gospel gets too challenging, will you also leave? What about mutuality? Without mutuality, there's no dialogue. That's a given for mutuality. What does that mean? Mutuality functions when I have a sense of the common good. Now, let me tell you about the common good from a global north, which you are, even though you're in the southern hemisphere. Global north is a socio-political term. It means basically people who have more money than they know what to do with, and they have no needs that go unmet. People who live like you and I do, our sense of the common good is pretty skewed, because we always think the common good, let's see what your name is, sir. David. Hello, David. Yes, and David and I'm pleased to meet you too, David. We're having a conversation of the common good, and maybe we're talking about, I want to know the kind of, we buy water in plastic bottles. And, we know all the empirical evidence that's not good and so forth. But we're saying, no, you know what, though, when you're traveling, it's more convenient and so forth. And then we usually get to a point like this, if those people that are in the sports activities, if they didn't buy plastic bottles of water, then common good, do you see where the finger's going? Okay? The common good conversation never goes like this. I need to not buy water in plastic bottles. I need to downsize my lifestyle. I need to make choices about what I do with my resources. So one of the things that's needed for mutuality and dialogue is a sense of the common good. And if you don't think that that's hard, try the next time you're having a conversation with anybody and see in your mind how tempted you are to say, you know what? I know what the problem is. It's Shirley. Okay? And then do a little test for yourself and say, I know what the problem is. It's Carol. As soon as you start to do this gesture, you're getting common good 101. No common good, no mutuality. No mutuality, no dialogue. Does everybody follow? Okay. Second thing up there is sense of interdependence. I don't know about you, but where I come from, we're not very interdependent. We think we can do it all. We don't need anybody. And we decide who we don't need. And a sense of humility and curiosity. That third phrase up there, one of the things that's very challenging for me is this whole thing of polarization. You have any polarization going on? Yeah. You know what polarization is here? Can I have two people here? Oh, thanks. You're jumping up right away. And who are you?
Redem.
You are Redem. Oh, okay, Redemptus. Redemptus?
Yes.
What a lovely name, Redemptus. Oh, okay. And can I have you? You're not jumping up right away, but you're coming anyhow? Okay? Yeah, you're the only one I'm looking at, so it must be you. Okay? And let me see you. Oh, sister, the doctor, is it Dr. Aileen? Oh, my goodness, doctor. Okay. All right, doctor. Here, would you stand over here, doctor, please? Give her a hand. She's shy. Now, I would like you to look at each other. No, stay far apart. You're not nice. You're not nice to each other, okay? Go away. Polarization. Go away. Keep going. Polarization is when we create this distance between us. And we dig our heels in our opinion, in our thought, in our stance, in whatever it might be. We dig our heels in, and then we proceed to scream at each other across the divide that we have created. Does anybody have an experience of that kind of polarization? Yeah. The antidote to polarization is that third thing that's up there. Redemptus, come in here to slowly, because this is scary. You don't want to come running in, okay? The only antidote to polarization is a sense of humility. You stay here, doctor. There's a sense of humility on Redemptus's part. You're doing this like you have a lot of practice at this, Redemptus. He's walking very, very, very hesitantly, trying to get up the courage of humility and curiosity to come to the opposite end and to simply say, please tell me more. Okay, thank you. Thank you. The antidote to polarization is humility and curiosity. And polarization will never be resolved until someone at one of the ends decides to be a little humble and to be a little curious and to start walking across the space that they've created with the other person, not standing there and saying, I'm not moving till hell freezes over, and he's going to take the first step. That's not humility and curiosity. Okay, does that make sense? Okay? And those 3 letters down there is also not a word that you don't know. It's actually 3 letters of an organization, United Religions Initiative. Does anybody know about that? Fabulous group. You are I. You are I. Until we get to that sense of a common good and interdependence and a sense of humility and curiosity about what someone else thinks and feels and believes, until I get to a deep understanding that you, Redemptus, and you, Doctor, you are I. Once I get there, I've got a chance for mutuality, which means I've got a chance for dialogue. So again, a pause. What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And what difference does it make? And finally, your love compels me, Lord, to give as you would give, to speak as you would speak, to live as you would live. Your love compels me, Lord, to see as you would see, to serve as you would serve, to be what you would be. Excuse me, I have a tickle in my throat. Okay, that's a little more challenging, all right? But notice the tone of it, because this, in fact, is the heart of what leadership formation for mission is about. It is about seeing and living and speaking and serving as Jesus would. Let's give this a try. Your love compels me, Lord, to give as you would give, to speak as you would speak, to live as you would live. Your love compels me, Lord, to see as you would see, to serve as you would serve, to be what you would be. So what does it mean to encounter as a way of understanding and living the Paschal Mystery? It means to say yes to a way of life. It means to say yes to a way of relating. And it means to say yes to a way of the heart. I know it sounds a bit poetic and la-la and foo-foo and so forth, but try it and see how la-la it is and how foo-foo it is. To actually say yes to a way of life, I am going to encounter others as I meet them. I am going to relate to others in an encountering way. And I am, in fact, going to say yes to a way of the heart. So what does that look like? Well, I would offer for your consideration that it has something to do with committing to an engaging way of being. And engaging, like my friend Jenny here, really wrapping ourselves, not literally of course, but wrapping ourselves around each other as if we really mean it and as if I really need you. It's a commitment to engaging that way of being, to be involved with, to be involved in, to occupy someone's attention. When I am really engaged and I am really encountering someone, they have all of my attention. Have you ever been in someone's attention like that? Yeah. It's profound, isn't it? Have you ever given someone your attention like that? It's exhausting, isn't it? Yeah. Now, don't forget, we all take care of ourselves too, all right? So that's all. I'm presuming here everybody's doing their own inner work. You go to spiritual direction, got a healthy sense of yourself, yada, 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 all right? And you know how to take care of yourself, all right? That's the self that's able to be involved with others, to occupy someone's attention. That's the self that's able to pledge and enter into a contract. That my time here with you and your time with each other, this isn't just I had no place else to go except fly 20 hours to get here to give this talk. That's not what this is about, not for me. This is an encounter. I expect to leave here on Thursday totally transformed by you. I came into the room with that in mind. When we get to that point of preparedness, then we're ready for an encounter. It also has to do with committing to an emerging way of living. Let me tell you something about emerging. It's annoying. Anything that's emerging and developing and unfolding is usually very irritating because we don't like things that are emerging. We like things that are emerged. We don't like things that are developing. We like them finished. We like to get to the end. That's not the way this gospel life is. It is much more a commitment to this idea that development of faith, development of relationships, it develops gradually. We're in this for the long haul, folks. This Paschal Mystery on the calendar each year goes from Friday to Sunday. Good Friday to Easter Sunday, but let me tell you, it's a lot longer than that. It's a lifetime of encountering the Paschal Mystery. The second thing up here is really important. We don't like this one either, because if I'm committed to an evolving way of loving, then things are going to get more complex and not less. Anybody here like more complexity? No. And finally, it's a commitment to an unfolding and a rolling out. I have a Native American, Lakota Sioux, very good friend of mine, one of my teachers, Buck Gosthorst. And what he says all the time is that when the people gather in the presence of Sacred Spirit, the real work is to let the Sacred Spirit have her way. And our work is to follow her threads and let her take us where she wants. That's what unfolding and rolling out of Formation for Mission and Leadership for Mission looks like. And so again, very briefly, when we think about Leadership for Mission as an encounter, how engaged are you? How are you with things that are emerging? And what kind of stance do you have about things in life that are always evolving? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? And what difference does it make? So in conclusion, no, I'm not going to ask you to do that. Okay. But this walk of leadership for mission, to actually exercise leadership for the sake of the gospel, it is about as tricky as this. Whether you're the rope, the elephant, or the giraffe, you're all in a pretty risky place. Nothing here is more safe than anything else. But I'm not going to ask you to do that. I'm not asking you to do this either. Aren't you happy? You know, I have a friend who's a physicist, and one of the things he says is that this kind of act takes about 10,000 hours of practice, because the space between those two artists is usually where you would write the word trust. And what he tells me is that this is an act of physics, and they have to practice so often because they have to feel. Notice the academic word. They have to feel when the split second of trust is there. And every partner that they do this with, they have to practice a different 10,000 hours. It's not that you get a feel for the split second of trust, now you can just do it with any other partner. Every partner has its own feeling of trust. The reason I put this up here as we close is Leadership for Mission is about that kind of trust. First of all, of ourselves, with the God whom we love, with the Jesus of the gospel in whose footsteps we walk. If we do not have a 10,000-hour relationship with Jesus, otherwise known as prayer, a prayer life, if we do not have that kind of trust, then leadership for formation and for mission is going to be almost impossible. My friend, by the way, also says that he has seen these artists when they don't practice 10,000 hours. He has seen wrists totally separated from the lower part of the arm and shoulders totally pulled out from the top of the arm. This is risky business without your practice of 10,000 hours. No trust, no action. No trust on our part in God, no leadership for mission. No trust, no 10,000 hours of our own prayer life, our own contemplative way of being, our own sense of you did it to me, our own sense of will you also leave. Unless we really spend time developing that way of being, there will be no leadership for mission. There will be no capacity for inclusivity, dialogue, or encounter. Because finally, we end where we started. We hear God say to us all the time, I have made you a light for the nations. I have made you that. I came so that you would have life and have it more abundantly. I choose you, and I chose you to go and bear fruit that will last. You are set apart for me and for my presence on earth. The work to which I called you, the work of leadership for mission to which I called you. And finally, love one another as I have loved you. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Halle, halle, hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah. This is the day that the Lord has made, that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, and be glad in it. Thank you very much.